Emily moved into the cul-de-sac on a gray October morning, her car still stuffed with boxes and her heart still heavy from the divorce papers she had signed only weeks before. The house itself wasn't grand, just a modest two-story with peeling shutters, but it was hers. After years of compromise, this was her fresh start. At first, the neighborhood looked picture perfect. Trimmed lawns, matching mailboxes, porch lights that all flickered on at the same hour. But as she carried in the first box, she noticed a woman across the street pause mid-step, watching her with a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. "New here?" the woman asked, her voice sharp under the sweetness. "Yes," Emily said, forcing warmth. "Just moved in today." The woman's eyes flicked to the overstuffed car, then to Emily's untamed hair. "Well, I'm sure the HOA will have plenty to explain. We like things consistent around here." By the second week, Emily began receiving letters. At first, they were harmless, reminders about trash cans left out too long or her lawn not being uniform enough. But the tone shifted quickly. One note, scrawled in thick ink, read, "Your shutters are the wrong shade. Fix it before you ruin the street's aesthetic." Emily tucked the letter into a drawer, trying to laugh it off, but the laughter sounded hollow in the empty house. The cold stares followed her on evening walks. Parents hushed their children when she passed. One man shook his head when he saw her struggling to rake leaves, muttering, "Doesn't belong here." At night she lay awake, wondering why her presence unsettled them so deeply. She was quiet, respectful, even polite, but she felt it in her bones. This wasn't about her shutters or lawn. They had already decided she was an intruder in their perfect little world. And somewhere behind those polished smiles, someone was waiting for her to break. The first letter had been unsettling. The fifth felt like a declaration of war. Every week, a new envelope appeared, sometimes tucked under her doormat, sometimes balanced on her porch rail, once even taped across her front door like a warning sign. Each one listed some violation. Her grass was half an inch too long, her curtains didn't match the neighborhood palette, her recycling bin wasn't pulled in quickly enough. Fines began to follow, neat slips of paper with bold numbers scrawled across them. $200 for unsightly weeds. $100 for unapproved holiday decor, even though it was just a pumpkin by the steps. Emily paid the first few, hoping compliance would quiet them. Instead, the letters multiplied. Then came the vandalism. One morning, she found her mailbox pried open, its hinge bent like broken fingers. Inside was a single slip of paper. "Leave before we make you." Shaken, Emily forced herself to attend her first HOA meeting. The community hall was bright and sterile, filled with neighbors who smiled at each other but wouldn't meet her eyes. At the front sat Margaret, perfectly coiffed, pearls around her neck, voice smooth as polished glass. "We'll begin with homeowner concerns," Margaret said, scanning the room before landing on Emily. "You've had several notices, haven't you?" Emily swallowed hard. "Yes, but some of them don't make sense." "I think there's been a mistake." A ripple of laughter moved through the room. Margaret leaned forward. "Mistakes aren't made here. Perhaps you're not familiar with how we do things." Her smile widened. "Some people simply don't fit." Emily sat frozen, humiliated. But beneath her shame was something sharper. Suspicion. The HOA spoke about funds constantly, maintenance fees, landscaping budgets. Yet the numbers didn't add up. She overheard one board member whisper about missing invoices, silenced quickly when Margaret shot him a look. The more Emily listened, the clearer it became. The hostility wasn't just about her shutters or her lawn. Something was festering beneath the surface, and Margaret was desperate to keep it hidden. As Emily left the meeting, another letter waited on her windshield. Only 4 words scrawled in thick black ink. "You'll never win here." Emily clenched it in her fist. She was done being their victim. If they wanted war, she would give it to them. The night after the HOA meeting, Emily couldn't sleep. She sat at her kitchen table, papers spread before her. Violation slips, fine notices, fragments of overheard conversations. The threats weren't random. They were deliberate, meant to break her. But it wasn't the fines that caught her attention. It was the money. Numbers scribbled in newsletters didn't match the amounts neighbors claimed to pay. Landscaping projects were billed twice, while maintenance fees climbed higher each month. Where was the money going? Her answer came on a quiet Thursday evening. While walking past the clubhouse, she saw shadows flickering behind the blinds. Voices murmured, low and intimate. She edged closer. Margaret's voice sharp yet hushed. "You promised no one would notice." A man replied, his tone strained. "It's risky. If this comes out, then you lose everything," Margaret cut in. Through a thin gap in the curtain, Emily caught a glimpse. Margaret's hand on the arm of Richard, the HOA treasurer, far too close to be innocent. The affair wasn't shocking, but paired with the missing money, it was a weapon. The next day, Emily cornered Richard outside the clubhouse. "I know what's happening," she whispered. "The stolen funds. The meetings after hours. How long do you think you can keep covering for her?" Richard paled, his briefcase trembling in his grip. "You don't understand," he muttered. "Margaret, she has proof. Things that could ruin me." His voice cracked, eyes darting like a trapped animal's. "I can't fight her. None of us can." For a moment, Emily almost pitied him, but pity dissolved into resolve. The HOA wasn't just cruel, it was corrupt. That night, Emily sat in the dim glow of her desk lamp, heart heavy but mind sharp. Every violation slip, every whispered secret, every frightened glance from Richard. It all pointed to the same truth. Margaret's empire was built on fear and silence, and Emily was done being silent. She began drafting a plan, steady and cold. If Margaret wanted a war, she would finally see what it felt like to lose. Emily's desk became a battlefield. Stacks of letters, photographs of vandalized property, notes from whispered conversations, all arranged with the precision of someone who had nothing left to lose. Each piece was small, but together they formed a weapon sharper than Margaret could ever imagine. When Emily finally walked into her attorney's office, she felt the weight of months of fear pressing down on her shoulders. "I want to file," she said, sliding the evidence across the desk. Harassment, fraud, embezzlement, everything. The lawyer skimmed through the papers, brows lifting higher with each page. "This isn't just a complaint," he murmured. "This is enough to bury them." Word spread quickly after the lawsuit was filed. The HOA board scrambled, calling emergency meetings that no longer felt controlled. Investigators arrived in crisp suits, their quiet questions pulling threads until the entire fabric unraveled. Neighbors who once avoided Emily began whispering their own stories. Strange fines, unexplained increases in dues, pressure to stay silent. One by one, the witnesses came forward. Richard broke first. Cornered with documents showing missing funds traced to his signature, he confessed to falsifying records under Margaret's pressure. "She told me she'd ruin me if I didn't comply," he sobbed during deposition. "I couldn't stop her." Margaret's empire collapsed in real time. Her polished image, pearls, manicured hands, carefully rehearsed speeches, crumbled under the weight of affidavits and financial records. Her husband filed for divorce after the affair surfaced. Former allies turned their backs. By the time she stepped into court, she was a ghost of the woman who once ruled the cul-de-sac. Emily attended every hearing, silent but steady, watching justice grind forward. When the final judgment arrived, Margaret, stripped of her position, fined heavily, and facing criminal charges, the neighborhood itself seemed to exhale. The next morning, Emily stood on her porch, a cup of coffee in hand. For the first time since she'd moved in, the air felt still, free of menace. Children laughed as they biked down the street. No letters waited on her doorstep. She hadn't just kept her house, she had taken back her life. Emily closed her eyes, letting the quiet sink in. Victory wasn't loud. It was the silence of no longer being afraid.